Okay, so today we're working on divisibility rules, so that is our title. I'm going to put divisibility rules up at the top, and this is page 11. So down at the bottom, we're going to write that it's page 11. So I have taken the page that we got and I have cut on all of the dotted lines. So I cut around, and then I also cut here, here, and here. And then I'm folding those in to the middle. So this is going to be kind of a foldable that we can lift our tabs. So this back part is where our glue will go. So just a dot in each corner should be okay. You can do one in the middle too if you feel like you need to. Make sure it's right side up. And then we're pressing that down. Okay. Alright, so the first rule we're going to look at is when a number is divisible by 2. So it says the rule is the last number must be even. E-V-E-N. So that means it ends with a 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0. Don't forget about 0. So some examples would be 102. Ends with an even number. 746. That ends with an even number. You could have something like 32,002,008. That 8 makes it an even number. Anything that ends in a 0. So, for example, 1,000. That is even. 54. I think that's a pretty good list. All right. So let's go right below that. Below that is the divisibility rule for 3. So we're going to write divisible by 3. The rule for being divisible by 3 is you add the digits together. If the sum is divisible by 3, then the number itself is divisible by 3. Okay, so let's look at some examples, because if you don't know this rule already, this one could be a little bit tricky. Okay, so the first one we're going to look at is 831. How do I know off the top of my head without dividing if this is divisible by 3? Well, I'm going to add 8 plus 3 plus 1. 8 plus 3 would be 11. 11 plus 1 is 12. 12 is a much smaller number than 831. Is 12 divisible by 3? Of course, we know that 12 divided by 3 is 4. So that means that yes, this number 831 is divisible by 3. Another example, 126. So I'm going to add together 1 plus 2 plus 6. That gives me 9. Is 9 divisible by 3? Of course. So 126 is divisible by 3. Last example, 1,116. Let's add our digits together. 1 plus 1, plus 1 plus 6. And I messed up just a little bit, and that's okay if we mess up in our notebooks. I have whiteout. You can mark it out. You can use whiteout in your notebook. No big deal. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 6 is 9. And like we just said, 9 is divisible by 3. So 1,116 is divisible by 3. Once you get the hang of it, this rule is pretty easy, and it's probably one of my favorites. Okay. Next is divisible by 4. So how do we know if a number is divisible by 4? When we're looking at the divisibility of 4, we want to look at the last 2 digits of the number. If the last 2 digits are 00, or if they are divisible by 4, then we know that that whole number is divisible by 4. So for example, 200. It ends in 00, so we know that it's divisible by 4. Another one would be 316. Looking at the last 2 numbers, 16 is divisible by 4, so we know that that whole number is divisible by 4. 744. 44 is divisible by 4. Could look at 1,000. Those last 2 numbers are 00, so we know it's divisible by 4. 1,536. 36 is divisible by 4, so we know it's divisible by 4. And last example, 624. 24 is divisible by 4, so the whole number is divisible by 4. Okay. Our next rule is divisibility by 5. So there we go. Divisible by 5. How do we know if a number is divisible by 5? The last digit must be 5 or 0. So any number that ends in a 5 or 0 we know is divisible by 5. So some examples is 5,315. It's got the last digit of 5, so we know it's divisible by 5. We could have 910. Ends in a 0, so we know it's divisible by 5. Any number that ends with 5 or 0. Alright, Moving on, let's go to the top of the next column, and we're going to look at the rule for divisibility by 6. How do we know if a number is divisible by 6? It must be an even number, and it must be divisible by 3. So it's got 2 criteria. Basically, if it's divisible by 2 and 3, then it's divisible by 6. So some examples would be, I'm going to put this under here for stability when I'm writing. 234. Is 234 even? Yes. Well, what happens when I take 2 plus 3 plus 4? 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 plus 4 equals 9. Is 9 divisible by 3? Yes. So this whole number, 234, is divisible by 6. Another example would be 732. Is it even? Yes, it ends in a 2. We know it's even. So add our digits. 7 plus 3 plus 2. 7 plus 3 is 10, plus 2 is 12. Is 12 divisible by 3? Yes. So we know that 732 is divisible by 6. All right, our next rule is divisibility by 8. Okay, this one is very similar to the 4 rule, except this time we are looking at the last 3 digits. If the last 3 digits are 0, 0, 0, or divisible by 8, then we know that that number itself is divisible by 8. So for example, 5,000. It ends in 000, so we know that it's divisible by 8. Another example is 3,064. I know that 64 is divisible by 8, so 3,064 is divisible by 8. Another example would be 4,984. 984 is divisible by 8, so 4,984 is divisible by 8. Okay. Next is divisible by 9. Divisibility by 9 is much like divisibility by 3. You add the digits together. If the sum is divisible by 9, then the number itself is divisible by 9. Okay, so very similar to our 3 rule. So our first example we have is 225. If I add together 2 plus 2 plus 5, that gives me 9. Is 9 divisible by 9? Of course. So 225 is divisible by 9. Another example is 6,606. If we add together 6 plus 6 plus 6, that gives us 18. Is 18 divisible by 9? Yeah. So we know that 6,606 is also divisible by 9. And last rule, and this is probably our easiest rule, is numbers that are divisible by 10. The criteria for being divisible by 10 is that the last digit must be 0. So we could have a million different examples. Let's start with a million. Since it ends with 0, it is divisible by 10. We also have things like 20, 400, both of those end in 0. We have 130, it ends in a 0. And 5,860. It ends in 0, so it is divisible by 10. And that's it.